Hi, I'm Emily, and today I'm joined with Aaron to discuss one of the biggest nagging issues a lot of manufacturing shops face, which is parts proliferation. And I'd like to kick things off by introducing a metaphor that you suggested that I think is very evocative. Do you want to
Yeah, the
explain?
junk drawer of engineering chaos. I do really like that one for parts proliferation. Um, Proliferation is kind of an interesting conversation, because it impacts manufacturers really differently depending on how they operate, and it's felt across every member of the team. But the junk drawer is a great metaphor because ultimately, anyone who does high mix work, anyone who's gone through the process of designing, let's call it like a similar part, ad nauseum, 1,000 times over the last 20 years, uh, they're going to have this experience of all of those parts that go through the design just getting tossed into the metaphorical junk drawer to be searched for, pulled out later, maybe, if or perchance they become valuable again. But of course, like anyone's junk drawer at home, finding anything useful in there is easier said than done. And I think it describes kind of the, let's call it like the first layer of the problem that manufacturers encounter with proliferation.
Yeah, I think it's very evocative because it really captures too that junk drawers are created very innocently. Nobody sets out to make a mess. It's just here and there you have something. I'm not sure if I really need this, but I might as well hang on to it. I'll toss it in that drawer. Every individual thing you toss in doesn't feel that bad, but sooner or later it's going to become this massive pile that you don't want to deal with. You never want to search through it. Nobody's ever going to have the time to sit down and sort it out and organize it. And this is actually becoming a serious problem for a lot of manufacturers, like beyond just an annoyance.
Yeah, it's funny having this conversation with you because I read enough of your writing that I actually can understand perfectly why this metaphor tickles you as much as it does. uh, yeah, I mean it's a fun turn of phrase, but when I use it, I hope we don't run the risk of diminishing the actual impact of this thing for the business. And of course, you're right. Nobody sets out to create a storage solution where things are lost, into the ether. But that is what happens, and companies start to feel it all over the place. Um, we can begin to quantify that in a whole slew of interesting ways. I always like to think about conversations that I've had with some of our caddy customers here. Um, I think a conversation with Hilltop Manufacturing about 6 weeks ago, where one of their sales engineers was sharing with me the actual cost impact to the business of designing a redundant part, right? One of the clear consequences of proliferation. It's anywhere from between $4,500 and $7,500 per part per year.
Jeez.
I mean, that's an amalgamation of like additional storage costs, wasted engineering hours. Um, that's not even really touching and considering things like quality issues that might arise from small transitions or small changes in engineering approach. So there are just so many facets to the problem here, and it's very cool that we're exploring this right now.
Well, I think you touched on something really interesting there where it's like, this is also a symptom of a larger problem, which is just not really being able to engage with stuff you've done before. So when you're redesigning, when you're reinventing the wheel, and you're starting from scratch on something that you've already built like maybe a dozen things that are at least meaningfully overlapping, what are the odds that you're going to do it better this time, more cost effective this time, with less defects this time? You're basically just rolling the dice. Whereas if you actually have an organized system of past efforts, not only are you reducing redundant work, but you just get a lot better quality starting from something that you know was good.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's a great point. I think it's worth zooming out for a second to just set this clear context for the proliferation conversation itself. Um, for contract manufacturers, or I teased earlier anyone who does high mix work or custom work. Uh, you're going through the process of basically designing and manufacturing and then delivering to customers a, an incredibly high volume of parts or assemblies at any given point in time. And the reality of manufacturing, regardless of what sector you're in, is this is a workflow solution where many hands touch the work process. So you already have, under the best of circumstances, a lot of potential points of failure in the process of trying to get a new product out to market or get it into the hands of your customers. So the point that you're making there, which I think is a really good one, is once you do that successfully, once you design a bolt as a component of an assembly that's going into a Subaru, for instance, and you do it well with no problems, you're taking on an unnecessary risk anytime you decide to reinvent the wheel. The reason, truthfully, most people fall into this trap is not that they want to, it's simply that when there are so many participants in this process, it's a fait accompli. Like, it's a near guarantee that somebody along the way is not going to have full awareness of the work that was already done. This is especially true for storied manufacturing companies who have been doing, have been operating or doing specific types of work for, let's say, the last 50 years. There's obviously a lot of institutional knowledge that has been built up, but usually that's owned or controlled by some of the most senior members of the team. And, in manufacturing, we are in the midst of a massive skilled labor crisis. A lot of those very senior folks are approaching the end of their career. So we have this divide in manufacturing where the senior folks know quite well what has been made in the past and might be able to avoid this trap of proliferation, but they're transitioning out and being replaced by a new generation who, without the benefit of all of that knowledge handed down, is going to go through the process again of recreating things that have already been made. And manufacturers in every vertical feel this problem. Like, inventories are building up, not just because of a flagging demand, but because excess inventory is actually being developed. And every time an engineer puts pen to paper to redesign something that has been made in the past, you lose the time. And they could be putting that time towards more meaningful work. So it's a thing that really needs to be addressed desperately if manufacturing companies want to find the type of cost efficiencies that are going to help them weather a reduction in demand.
This is really interesting stuff. I like that you've touched on this very human element of, like, the resident expert, that maybe there's a lot of reliance on because they're the ones that know if something has been done before, where you can find that information. To kind of extend your earlier analogy, it's like, I don't know if your dad was like this. My dad, is a farmer, so he had this huge garage full of stuff and a barn full of stuff, and he's a farmer but also kind of a hoarder. But, like the back of his hand, if he needed a pipe socket or, 3.5 inch whatever, I'm clearly not in my element here, but he would know, reliably he would remember, well, I tossed that in this drawer downstairs, in that cabinet. And it's a remarkable skill brought up over decades of living in the same place and accumulating all this stuff. But how is that supposed to transfer over to someone new coming in and looking for these things? How is he going to impart that? It's not enough to have somebody that knows, even if they are willing to tell someone. It's better to just be organized from the jump.
Yeah, I think everyone's dad is this way, by the way. For me personally, knowing where everything is, and then being absolutely lost if anyone moves a single piece is really like a failure of object permanence because of, let's say, some gnarly attention deficit disorder. No, but my dad's the same way. So I grew up the child of a dual aeronautical and electrical engineer who also is very regimented and knows where things are, but without a roadmap for me navigating his garage and all those tools, I'm lost. This is actually a perfect analogy. A lot of our customers here at Caddy have come to Caddy at some point in time because Maybe first they were looking for a search solution to help them identify drawings. They really to deal largely with this problem, right? So they could do one of two things essentially. Standardize their design process and reduce the rate at which they're producing new duplicates, or identify duplicate drawings so they could start a consolidation exercise in their product catalog. And there are benefits to both. But what all of our Caddy customers have communicated with us since, or what we've come to realize as more and more people have adopted the tool, is the real benefit of a centralized system that is containing all of your drawings, all of your supply chain data, and is leveraging AI to help you identify quickly historical reference points that you need to do your job. Like, the real benefit there for people is creating a system of institutional knowledge that can facilitate the first steps required of a digital transformation. So that's a bigger conversation, and again, that conversation is probably engaged by manufacturers of different sizes and different points in their journey in very, very different ways. So for some of our biggest customers, like Subaru, for instance, who's a global company with divisions across continents, they are using Caddy as this system of institutional knowledge to make sure that design stays consistent as they operate across the globe. On the other hand, if we look at, I think Hilltop, which I referenced earlier, the smaller fabricator, they're looking to make sure that all of their junior sales engineers can understand quickly how a minor change in design could impact the cost of manufacturability, so they don't have to go to a production engineer and waste that coordination time. So both of these are human enablement items that go to facilitate the broader concept of digital transformation, but they're obviously operating at very different elevations. And I think that's another really interesting element of manufacturing. It is a global supply chain with a lot of really diverse players. Makes this industry fun.
Yeah. Well, I hope if you take one lesson away from this, whether you're a big size company, a small size company, you probably have a messy garage. You probably have a spot where you've been tossing things and hoping the pile never gets too big.
Yeah, it's time to clean out the junk drawer.
It's time to clean out the junk drawer. Investing in a good spring cleaning. Well, I've been Emily, and I've been joined by Aaron today. I really hope you enjoyed this discussion. If you'd like to see more, we'll be uploading these probably every other week or so be sure to subscribe. And if you want to see how Caddy can help you with that deep spring cleaning, check out us.caddy.com.
All right, we'll talk to you soon.
We'll talk to you later.